This episode of Nos Audietis is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Audietis since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to...
This is Nos Audietis.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
Save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rangers through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nicoladero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is good.
Seattle Sounders, the greatest MLS team in history.
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
And Paul McKay says, cheat!
We want to win. Let's see how the Sunday, bro.
Good for Seattle!
Welcome back to another edition of Nos Audietis for the week of the question. This is the question and answer session for week 9 of the MLS season. I am Jeremiah Shan. Joining me as always is Aaron Campo and our producer Lickett. So we have a bunch of questions. Why don't we just jump right into those?
I think that's a great idea. First one is from Tom Glanz. It's hard to not feel like the intensity of the rivalry is lost on some portion of current Sounders, especially with Brian's comments along those lines. Is that mainly a factor of our age/maturity in MLS, the rivalry being overplayed, or do you think it's something else?
You know, that's a good question, and we never really, and I don't necessarily expect to get to the bottom of who exactly Brian was referring to. You know, he sort of made it sound like he didn't say players. He just said there were people in the locker room. I think he may even said staff who were sort of like smiling and laughing after the game. I would be a little surprised if there were any players smiling and laughing after any loss. In my experience, the locker room is not a fun place to be after any loss, let alone a loss to the Timbers, especially a loss where you just got totally pantsed in the last 20 minutes. So I don't know. I don't know that it's lost. I don't think it's lost on the players, but there is some emotional disconnect. I think part of it is that the Sounders, I feel like collectively have sort of felt like beating the Timbers is a path towards bigger achievements and not an achievement unto itself. And it does feel like the Timbers are able to conjure up a level of intensity for these rivalry games that the Sounders are just having a trouble meeting. I don't know that there's a really logical explanation for that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that last year the Timbers definitely felt like they had something to prove. I think that the motivation of wanting to ruin your biggest rival's banner raising is can definitely be a motivating factor. This season, I mean, I think there's a good chance Gio Salvarese's job was on the line. I think that the Timbers are definitely at a point where it's like, hey, we've got to start winning games if we're going to have any hope of making the playoffs. What better time to start than now? But if anything, I'm not in the locker room and I'm not in training, so I can't say for sure. But just from my position as an observer, if anything, it feels like the Sounders are getting overwhelmed at times. Like the gravity of, oh no, here it goes again is creeping in, and that doubt is creeping in a way that it just seemingly doesn't against other teams.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, it's not like the guys on this team
haven't played in big games
against the Timbers. I mean, most of the guys on this team beat the Timbers at whatever they're calling that stadium now, 6-2.
Right.
Like 18 months ago, right? So
almost to a man, almost all these players that were in that, like Obed Vargas, Jackson Reagan, I would imagine everyone else played in that game.
Yeah, it's baffling, and I think that I have a tendency to, when there are patterns in what is ultimately a pretty small sample like this, my assumption is always like, this is just randomness, right? And I think a lot of the time it is. But I've watched these 4 games. Right. There's nothing. This is a thing that's happening. Like there is a real effect going on. It's pretty clear. And I don't know what it is, but they got to figure it out, man. Because I think the point you make about the Sounders seeing this game as a path to bigger and better things is true, and I think that that's probably the reasonable way to look at it. But an MLS season is not. It's 34 games. It's 8 months, 9 months, however long it is. It's a whole hell of a long time.
Yeah.
Obviously, the biggest thing is winning games, winning trophies, all that. But beating the Timbers matters a lot. And to fail to do it 4 times in a row while just getting so badly outplayed, like that matters.
And it should be said they haven't beaten the Timbers at home since 2000. Like in the regular season since 2017.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's a long time ago.
That's really not good. Yeah.
It's not good. So kind of on the same note, this is from Interpersonal. Will this 4th consecutive loss finally be enough for the Sounders to bring angry rivalry energy to the June rematch? It feels very off that a talented Sounders side has lost their edge against Portland.
I hope so, man, because it kind of feels like if they are not able to right the ship against Portland, that this is going to become a thing, like for a while. And I just, it can't not creep over into the rest of the season to some degree, right? Like when you get pantsed like that in such an embarrassing fashion. And if it happens again, like if it happens, they come up here at home with the motivating factor of everything else that's gone on. Last year, I think it's easy to say, well, yeah, we lost both games, but we lost a lot of games last year. And because all the other stuff was going on. This year, the Sounders looked like the best team in the league.
Yeah,
and they get destroyed, and the Timbers were better last year than they are this year. Not a lot better, but a little better. So yeah, I really hope so. Like I want them to win that game by several goals. I think like more and more that like I always want them to win by several goals, but like it is important to me that they win that game by several goals.
Yeah.
All right, next one is from @Garrettini. Were the defensive failures due to lacking Rusnak and Roldan, poor performances by the CBs, Cascadia, Voodoo, or a mix of all the above?
I mean, a mix of all the above surely is the correct answer. I think Rusnak and Roldan are part of the answer, but it's a little too convenient, I think, to put too much stock in that. I do tend to think that the center back play was probably the most glaring issue. But that's not the most. I didn't have a good fun answer there.
Right. Yeah, it does suck that the answer to this is always.
It's always the above.
Always all of the above. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is from Bill Jones Trumpet. Seems like no matter who else plays, we always struggle without Christian. I've attributed last year's issues to his absence and playing while injured. Is he the glue that holds our squad together?
I think, yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, I do think that he's a player that the Sounders like. It's weird to say that like one player is more than the sum of their parts, but like he's more important to the Sounders than I think his just profile as a player would maybe lead you to believe. I do think in this game that missing both him and Rusnak was sort of the opposite of a force multiplier, a force divider, I guess. That just it had a huge ripple effect, and I think a lot of it came down to when things started spiraling, the Sounders didn't have a way of playing to fall back on.
Right.
Like they'd been able to kind of dominate the game through their talent, but when they were struggling and they weren't able to dominate anymore, they didn't have that identity to fall back on. And I think that Christian is a huge part of that. And I think that his sort of being less than his best down the stretch last season was definitely a huge part of their struggles. Yeah, I totally think that's a reasonable observation.
Yeah, I mean, if the question is the Sounders' most the player who's hardest to replace in the lineup, I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
In part because he can do so many different things.
Yeah, and he can bring his energy and his skill set to completely different parts of the pitch.
Yeah,
which is not, it's rare to find. Next one is from AW Stiggs. I feel like we kind of answered the first part of this question, but if there's anything we want to elaborate on, we can do that. The second part is a new territory. So part 1, who did we miss more, Albert, Christian, or someone else? Part 2, any chance we can have green on green for the next matchup?
So yeah, I think we did answer the first one. Christian, I'm going to say is the answer there. So I did some legwork on finding out about the kit matchup. As you probably know, it was red versus rose, or pink, I guess we could call that. And my understanding is all 3 games will be played in red versus pink, and that is a decision by the league. I guess it is deemed the least or the most contrasting of the various kit matchups. I would tend to think that the obvious answer would be to let one of those games be green versus pink, but I don't know. This might be I've heard that it might be a somewhat political decision. Like they don't want to let the Sounders wear green because I can imagine that there's a valid argument to be made that the Timbers greens are too dark to play against the Sounders red. That I don't like, and I suppose there's an argument to be made about that.
Yeah.
But there's no reason that the Sounders green shouldn't be able to pair against the Timbers pink. But that is apparently not what the league wants to do. I don't know. I can't tell you why that is, but it's a league decision, and this is the way it's going to be, at least for now. So
I can kind of see the perspective of, if we can't wear our home at home, why should they be able to wear their home at home?
Right. I suppose that's probably the case.
I think that a big part of the issue here is that the Sounders' primary jersey is their light jersey, and it's not especially light. Like I have some issues with the kit situation in MLS. I think everybody needs to have a actual light colored jersey so that we're not in situations like this.
Or
but
so and I will say that of all the there's a visceral reason you don't want to see the Sounders and Timbers play red versus pink, and it's just that it doesn't feel right, because it's not either team's main color, it's not either team's main palette even. They're both sort of off palette colors. But it is a legitimate contrast. I will say that there was no confusion. Like, the 2 jerseys are, at a very quick glance, very obviously different teams. Like, there's not really they do contrast well, I have to admit.
They do. Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately not a big deal. I'm looking at a color wheel now, and yes, the red and green are on actual opposite sides of the color wheel. So anyway, it's ultimately, it doesn't matter, but it still pisses me off. It's and I was pissed off about it before the game even started.
I was too.
But I do think the solution is, hey, everybody has to have a white or light gray kit, or very light blue or whatever, even if you only wear it in situations like this. But they're not going to do that.
So this is from Death Row Durham. What's going on with Arreaga? I'm completely content with the starting pairing we have, but seems really weird to have a player of his caliber just sitting on the bench rather than selling him.
Well, Jeremiah, you would definitely know better than I would about whether or not there are any, moves in the offing. But I mean, we've kind of talked about this in the past, and that I think the Sounders probably would be open to moving him if somebody wanted him and they were offering something the Sounders found enticing. But the Sounders also don't have a great third center back option. And, we're not that far into the season. Reagan and Yamar have looked great. We haven't had any injury issues at that position as of yet. And that's not going to be the case all year. Somebody's going to get banged up. Maybe Jackson Reagan gets a U.S. national team call up at some point. Who knows, right? So I think the Sounders are definitely not going to want to part with Arreaga unless they feel like they can replace him. Yep. And that's just kind of tough to do. So they're going to have to get a really good offer before they're willing to do that. And he will get some playing time at some point. I think it's just hasn't worked out that way quite yet.
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to offer to add to that, but you're right. Like I think the Sounders are very much in make us an offer mode. But man, after you see a trade like what just happened in MLS, where Montreal sent Kamal Miller and $1.3 million in GAM to Miami for Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter, which is one of the most impossible to understand, the hardest to understand trades in MLS history. I can't imagine that helps the trade market for Arreaga to think that like you would like, I don't know. It's sometimes the best moves are the ones you don't make, and keeping Arreaga right now might be a smart one.
Yep. The next one is from Better Dan. What's the next time you want to see Jordan as a mostly right wing?
Well, I mean, like I think we mentioned that we might see it this week, and I wouldn't be against it, especially if it means, essentially if your choice is between starting Vargas and Chu. I guess the other option I didn't mention was that you could start Rui Diaz as the forward, Morris on the left, and Rusnak on the right. That was the third option that which I suppose you could do, and maybe that is one possibility here. I tend to think that Chu is probably going to get another start though.
Yeah, I think if Christian was healthy, I would expect him to be starting in Chu's place. But if he's not, then
right.
And I think Chu has earned the benefit of the doubt for the starting lineup. I thought he was going to he's been good in every appearance he's had this year. I think he's been the most consistently good Sounders player. Him and Jordan, obviously. So,
right.
Yeah, I think so. And like Jordan, the right wing is not my favorite position for him. I think he's better cutting in or better in the middle, but he's not bad there. And, he can still be pretty effective there. He's good enough with the outside of his right that he can cut in from the right and still cause problems. So he's not, it's not a long-term solution. I don't think that anybody would be thrilled with, but for now, I think it works
okay. So this is from Elaine and Ballard. If we make the playoffs, I'm going to assume making the playoffs is not a base standard here. But anyway, if we make the playoffs, win the Supporters Shield, or make MLS Cup finals, do you agree that it doesn't matter if we ever win against Portland or not, unless it's actually in the playoffs? So I think what she's saying, and I'm going to interpret this as a way that I feel like is the better way of asking the question. Is that if you have to choose, if you are in a world where the Sounders are, winning silverware or competing for silverware at the very least in finals and whatnot, would you be okay with continuing to not beat the Timbers in the regular season?
I mean, if
this is like a monkey paw type of question,
right?
Obviously we want both.
Cosmic choice,
right?
I guess, but it's not. the Sounders should beat the Timbers. Like there was a lot of discussion about this after the game. Steve Zakuani had a fair number of posts about this being one game, and like, yes, it's frustrating, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things, it's still just one game. But it's not, right. It's not like Timbers games are not like the other games. It sucks to lose to them. These games are important, and so in the reality where we don't have that false choice, it is okay to be pissed off about losing to the Timbers, especially 4 times in a row, especially by an aggregate 11-2. And these games, like, this isn't happening in isolation, and I understand why that frustration is there, and why people are so upset about it. And so, yeah, I mean, if you have that choice of, like, we can guarantee you that the Sounders are going to be competitive, competing for trophies every year, and in exchange, you never beat the Timbers, or the other choice is you beat the Timbers every time, but you're never competitive. I mean, obviously you want the chance at silverware if that's the more important thing, but it's not like those are the only choices that we have. The Sounders can win silverware and beat the Timbers. They've done it several times. So
it has happened.
It has happened. So yeah.
I will say this: I would trade regular season failures against the Timbers for postseason victories against the Timbers. Like, if I have to, like, if I had to choose one place, so if that has to happen, I guess. But the Sounders play the Timbers twice more this year. They better not lose those 2 games.
Yeah, I'm going to be pretty pissed off about it if they do.
Yeah, just the fact that we're entertaining this possibility is absurd.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that the joke was, well, it's a pretty even rivalry, but the away team always wins, and
right.
And now it's just the Timbers always win, and that's not where
I don't like that.
No, it's not good. This one's from Kenny Sloth 253. What type of pets do some Sounders players have? I like to picture Nuhu with an elaborate aquarium.
This might be a good question for us to do some digging on, but
it is.
Best I can tell, the only players that are open about their pet ownership are the dog owners.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we have any cat or reptile or fish owners on the team.
Cat owners as pro athletes, men's pro athletes especially, I think, do not seem to be super common in my experience.
Huh.
And I don't, maybe it's because there are fewer soy boys like me or whatever, but
is that your cat's a soy boy pet?
I mean, that's what some people would say. I don't feel that way, but I think outspoken, there are baseball players that are like outspoken cat owners, but baseball players are, they can be a little more eccentric or less typical jocks, I guess. But
I might just have to start routinely asking players, do you have a pet?
Yeah. Find out if there are any cat owners, because if there are, I'd like to talk to them.
Yeah. All right. This is a new thing I'm going to be looking into.
Yeah. If there are cat owners, we could do special episodes of the podcast where I talk to the players about their cats.
Okay. So, is this? Oh, I'll ask it. STL Cinderacci this is a St. Louis fan here. Any tips for handling early success without becoming assholes about it? Is there anything you did concerning your early success that you wish you hadn't, or vice versa?
I have an answer for this, but I think your answer is perfect, so I want you to give it first.
Okay. So I guess the answer is that it presupposes that if I were to read this question more, if I'm to read between the lines, they seem to be suggesting that Sounders fans might be assholes about their success.
Yeah.
And that we might regret feeding into that perception. And personally, I guess I agree with the premise in a sense, but I also am totally fine with that. It was a lot of fun. Like, I don't know how many people that listen to this podcast remember one of the first promos that we ever did was we were talking about riding around on yachts and like really leaning into the whole the whole memeification of our fan base. And if people want to call us insufferable, that's fine. You know,
Right.
like enjoy I think worrying about like being perceived as the fan base everyone likes is overrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think everyone probably likes Whitecaps fans.
Yeah. That's the thing,
Like,
right?
good for them.
Is that there is no way to be if you're a Sounders fan and you have the whole like perspective of like, oh, you know, hey man, like I'm humble about our success and like I respect all. That's so annoying. That is such like a that's the worst guy in the world to be. I would rather like an Astros fan be just the way they are, right? Like just like kind of insufferable. Like, yeah, we beat you all the time. We win all the time. We have the best run team in the league, whatever. Yeah, we cheat. So what? So does everybody else. Guess what? We did it successfully and got a World Series out of it. Then be like, oh, you know, like I have a lot of respect for the Mariners and like you guys will get there. So don't patronize me.
And yeah, I will say you can be if you want to be like I'll add this. If you're a St. Louis fan and you don't want and you just don't want to get too far out over your skis,
yeah,
that's a different thing, right? Like that's like just like I don't want to become too much of an asshole in year one, because as much as it's fun to be leading the supporter shield after week 8, the reality is that maybe they don't know this, but there actually isn't a trophy for being in the supporter shield lead at week 8. You're gonna have to maintain this for another 26 weeks. 26 weeks, that's a long time.
It is. But if you go into Cincinnati and you beat them 5-1, talk your shit.
Right.
Enjoy it. Like none of this ultimately is important. None of it matters. It's not life or death. It's a distraction. It's entertainment. It's important to me in the sense that I love the Sounders. I love the sport. And
speak your truth.
But it's not important. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And I think the only actual advice that I would offer is that you can be an asshole without being a dick. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Don't be a dick. It's fine to be like, enjoy yourself, talk your shit.
Right.
But don't be like, don't go out of your way to find people to talk shit to. Don't like, if people are being cool, you should also be cool.
Right.
But enjoy your success, like enjoy your team's success.
Right. There's no reason that you can't exactly. Don't be a dick. I would say being an asshole is funny sometimes. Being a dick is never funny.
Right. And I think like an important thing to remember about the Sounders and where like the Sounders came along, the Seahawks have been bad for a while. They had gone to a Super Bowl in 2007, but it didn't turn out great. And they had been sort of middling for a few years before that, and then just dog shit for a long time before that. The Mariners were a total train wreck. The Sonics had just left. Like the Seattle sporting landscape was not in a good place. And the Sounders came in and they won trophies right away. And they were doing things in American soccer that nobody else had ever done. And like, yeah, they were like, Sounders fans were annoying as hell and still continue to be annoying as hell, but that's because their team won a lot and they do cool things and they're successful and they engage their fan base, and it's fun to be a Sounders fan. And when you are having fun as a sports fan and other people are not, their teams are struggling, their ownership doesn't care about putting a good product on the team, fans of those teams are going to find you annoying. There's nothing you can do about it. So just have fun with it.
Right. Like there's no team that enjoys a lot of success where other fan bases are just sort of like, I am so happy for Columbus Crew fans for being able to finally get to if the Whitecaps, part of the reason everyone likes Whitecaps fans is because the Whitecaps feel very unthreatening.
Yeah.
And so if they start winning, it's not gonna. No one's gonna be rooting for them anymore.
No,
like
think about the Red Sox, right? For
great example.
years,
Yeah.
for years, the first 20 years of my life, everybody felt so bad for the Red Sox. Everybody was
Took like
so
a week.
happy for them. Yeah. And like now they're like easily one of the most despised fan bases in the world. But if you like, if you're a younger person now who doesn't remember, you know, when the curse of Buckner was still a thing and all that, like if you don't remember those
2000 or whatever,
people,
Red Sox,
like everyone aside from Yankees fans was rooting for the Red Sox. They love the Red Sox. You know, they made a movie about it, about how much everybody loved the Red Sox with Jimmy Fallon and what's her name?
Yeah.
And
Drew Barrymore.
Right. And I know that it was about Arsenal. I know, but that's not the point.
Was it Arsenal or Liverpool?
It was Arsenal.
Oh, okay.
But
I guess I should read more soccer books.
But yeah, I mean, it does not take long for the lovable loser to have some success and become just as insufferable as everybody else.
Yeah.
The Patriots too, man. Like,
also, can I just add a slight note?
Yeah.
I have absolutely zero faith that St. Louis fans are going to be like somehow the fan base that bucks this, because Cardinals fans, I don't know, maybe St. Louis fans don't realize this, but I think Cardinals fans might be the most despised fan base in the entirety of Major League Baseball.
They are definitely the most made fun of.
Yeah, like as much as the Yankees suck and the Red Sox suck, I think like Cardinals fans are right there in terms of it. Like maybe it's changed, but back in my day.
Well, I have not seen a lot of from St. Louis supporters of soccer in St. Louis. I have not seen a lot of the more questionable things that maybe people don't like about Cardinals fans as much. But you are correct that, and I think that the common thread in why people find Cardinals fans so irritating is that they try to do that like haughty, above it all, high road shit. And when they're having success, it's just so annoying.
Yeah. So I guess the moral of the story is talk your shit, and hope that your players back it up for you, because that's what this is all about. It should be fun. And
if it comes to the point where they don't, it doesn't matter.
Right. And that doesn't mean you got to show up to the other team's tailgate and be an asshole.
Right.
But like, you know, like I think we're talking about online banter here and enjoying it. But I don't know, maybe I misread this and they're like, actually, we think Sounders fans are like, this would be very funny. I hope that that this person is listening to the show, and I hope they write in and say like, actually, you totally misinterpreted my question. I think Sounders fans are like what we should all aspire to be, because
I don't
you
think
guys
the
are
advice
so
changes.
Well, except for it doesn't change, but I would just feel funnier about it, because it's like, if they're like, no, you guys do it right. I'd be like, awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe they're looking, and so maybe that's it. Maybe what he meant is like, how do you not be dicks?
Right.
And maybe he listened to the interview I did with the guy from Flyover Footy, and he was like, that was such a good interview. I wish all the opposing teams would have such thoughtful interviews with their opposition. I don't know. I doubt it. But anyway, I hope we answered your question. But that's all we got. That's all we got today. So that was week 9's question and answer session. Thank you to our sponsors, Full Pull Wines and Watson's Counter, and of course our Substack subscribers. Just a reminder that if you want to support this podcast and support independent soccer media, a really great way to do that is to become a subscriber to our Substack. You can find it at nausaudietes.substack.com. We're doing all kinds of fun stuff over there. And honestly, it's a free newsletter at its core, so you should be reading that anyway, even if you don't want to give us money, although we do like money.
Yeah, we do.
You do. It makes this all much more sustainable, and but it makes us feel good about ourselves. Like we're not just doing this for poops and giggles or whatever. Anyway, I got a little outside my plan there. That said, I'm Jeremiah Shan, signing off for Aaron, Campo, and Lickett. This is Nos Audietes, and we will catch you next time.
We love you. Let's win another one!